Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Okay, now we are going to see speech community and speech variety. What is speech community? The social group that is singled out for any special study is called the speech community. In sociolinguistics, it refers to the group of people who have the opportunity to interact with each other and who share not just a single language with its related varieties but also attitudes towards linguistic norms. Okay, now let's look into speech variety. Speech variety or language variety refers to any distinguishable form of speech used by a speaker or a group of speakers. The distinctive features of a speech variety may be all of the following except lexical, syntactic, phonological, psycholinguistics. Now, there are two approaches to sociolinguistic studies. One is regional dialects. A regional dialect is a linguistic variety used by people living in the same geographical region. Sociolect, that is sociolect or social class dialect, refers to the linguistic variety characteristic of a particular social class. Okay, second feature is sociolect. Sociolect or social class dialect refers to a linguistic variety characteristic of a particular social class. Language and gender is the third feature. The language used by men and women have some special features of their own. So the question can be what ways or in what ways is language used by men or women different from that of men? The fourth feature, language and age. In many communities, the language used by the old generation differs from that used by the younger generation in certain ways. A perfect example of these can be seen in schools, while the teacher's language is different from the student's language. Students are very much affected by the changes in language and they grasp everything fast. Fifth feature is the idiolect. Idiolect is a personal dialect of an individual speaker that combines elements regarding regional, social, gender, and age variations. In other words, an individual speaker's regional and social background, his gender and age jointly determine the way he talks and the language he uses, which bears distinctive features of his own in his own idiolect. Then the sixth feature we have the ethnic dialect. An ethnic dialect is a social dialect of a language spoken by a less privileged population that has experienced some form of social isolation such as racial discrimination or segregation. Now let us look into variation at the lexical level. There are two variations, more formal and less formal. Now, if you see, the formal word for children can be offspring. Similarly, for a simple word for answer, it can be a reply to. And for put up with, we can say tolerate. So, I have given one example question for the dialectal synonyms. Now, it is a hypothesis concerning the relationship between language and thought proposed by Wolff under the influence of Sapir, his teacher. According to this hypothesis, the structure of the language people habitually use influences the ways they think and behave. That is to say, different languages offer people different ways of expression. So, to express the world around, they think and speak differently. Now, let us see pragmatics. To fully understand the meaning of a sentence, we must understand the context in which it is used. Let us see pragmatics versus semantics. Semantics, the meaning of language was considered as something intrinsic and inherent, that is, a property attached to language itself. Therefore, meanings of words and sentences are studied independent of language use. Pragmatics. Now, it would be impossible to give an adequate description of meaning if the context of language use is left unconsidered. Therefore, context is taken into consideration. Both semantics and pragmatics study the meaning of a linguistic form. However, they are different. What essentially distinguishes them is whether the language is on or at par with the context, or is it different. If it is not considered, the study is in the area of semantics. If it is considered, the study is in the area of pragmatics. Importance of context. Context determines the speaker's use of language and also the hearer's interpretation of what is said to him. Now let's see an example. My bag is heavy. Sentence meaning: bag being heavy. Possible pragmatic meanings: an indirect polite request asking the hearer to help him carry the bag, a declining of someone's request for help. So it can be anything. It can have an inner meaning, or it can just be the bag is heavy. I have given more examples. Try to think of the context in which the following sentences can be used for other intentions or purposes than just stating facts. The room is messy. Oh, it's raining. The music of the movie is good. You have been keeping my notes for a whole week now. What is a speech act? We will look into it in detail now. So just as people can perform physical acts such as hitting a baseball, they can perform mental acts such as imagining hitting a baseball. People can also perform another kind of act simply by using language. These are called speech acts. We use language to do a lot of things. Now some common speech acts. Speech act, assertion, conveys information. Speech act question elicits information. If it's a request, more or less politely elicits action. If it's an order, it demands action. If it's a promise, it commits the speaker to an action. If it's a threat, it commits the speaker to an action that the hearer does not want. Now there are many sentence types. Certain speech acts are so central to communication that we have special sentence types to mark them. The three main sentence types are declarative, interrogative, and imperative, as we all know. So the first, declarative, is a sentence that is a statement. So it ends with a full stop, and it's just a fact. He's just saying something. So he is cooking in the kitchen. That's it. There's nothing more or there's nothing less. If it's an interrogative sentence, it will be a question. So there will be a question mark at the end, and it will be a questioning sentence. Is he cooking in the kitchen? And then there is an imperative sentence. It says it can have an exclamation mark at the end too, and it would be with some tone or a voice added to it. So these sentence types are very important in speech. Certain speech acts are central to communication that we have special sentence types to mark them. So these sentence type help us to communicate exactly what we need to pass on, or the exact tone or the message is conveyed correctly with these sentence types. So notice that interrogative sentences typically express questions, but this association does not always hold for interrogative sentences. Let us look into speech act theory. John Austin's model of speech acts. Speech act theory, a philosophical explanation of the nature of linguistic communication. It aims to answer this question: what do we do when using language? Now let us see the model of three speech acts. According to this model, a speaker might be performing three acts simultaneously when speaking: locutionary, illocutionary, and perlocutionary. Now what is locutionary act? Act of uttering words, phrases, clauses. Illocutionary act, the act of expressing the speaker's intention. Perlocutionary act, the act performed by or resulting from saying something, the consequence of the utterance. Now let us see the principles of conversation. The philosopher Paul Grice formulated a cooperative principle which he believed underlies language use, according to which we must make sure that what we say in a conversation satisfies the purpose of the conversation. Grice argued that there are a number of conversational rules or maxims that regulate conversation in the spirit of the cooperative principle. Now there can be four maxims. The maxim of quantity: make your contribution as informative as required, no more or no less. The maxim of quality: do not say what you believe to be false and do not say what you lack evidence for. The maxim of relation: be relevant. The maxim of manner: avoid obscurity, ambiguity, be brief and orderly. Now, if you see, all languages change through time. But how they change, what derives these changes, and what kinds of changes we can expect are not obvious. By comparing different languages, different dialects of the same language, or different historical stages of a particular language, we can discover the history of languages. Now, coming up with historical linguistics is concerned with language change. It is interested in what kind of changes occur and why, and equally important, what kind of changes don't occur and why not. Language changes in all aspects of grammar, like phonology, morphology, syntax and semantics. Now let us look into sound change. Sound changes tend to be systematic. It is possible to see a regular pattern of pronunciation changes throughout the history of the English language. Now, if you see in modern English, spelling contains many silent letters which are actually just remnants indicators of earlier pronunciations. To anyone learning English, the presence of such letters can be quite troublesome. So the word initial vela stop consonants k and g were lost when they occurred before the nasal n. So in modern English, we don't write n in the word gnaw, and similarly the Middle English had x in the word night and it has been changed to gh, which makes it more complicated. Now let us see morphological and syntactic change. Change in agreement rule, change in negation rule, process of simplification and loss of inflection are the main changes that can happen. Then there are changes in the meaning, widening of the meaning, narrowing of the meaning, meaning shift. It can elevate the meaning or degrade the meaning. Now let's see some recent trends. Moving towards greater informality, that is a trend now. The influence of American English, the influence of science and technology, for example, space travel, computers, and internet languages, ecology, all these have great effect on our languages. What are the causes of language change? The rapid development of science and technology, social and political changes and political needs, the way children acquire the language, and the economy of memory. Let us see the definition for sociolinguistics. Sociolinguistics is a subfield of linguistics that studies the relation between language and society, between the uses of language and the social structures in which the users of language live.